I'm going to show you how you can save about $157 on an almost complete backpacking kit that weighs in at about 11.5 pounds. But first, what's going on, everybody? My name is Dave and this channel is Off Grid. I'm into backpacking, hiking, and gear. If you like those things too, please consider subscribing to the channel down below and then also hitting that bell notification so that you can be aware every single time I release a new video. Whew, all right, this one has been a labor of love. I'm super excited to do this video and to share this one with you guys. This has been a topic that I've been thinking about for at least a few months now, kind of like putting together what my ultimate budget gear loadout list would be. So a couple of things to keep in mind right off the bat here. The first one is going to be that this is not a 100% complete list. There are a few things that I did leave off of this list that I'll mention at the end of the video. It's kind of like the fringe items that are like small knickknacks here and there. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that all of the prices that I'm going to mention today are going to be the sale prices, the things that you're able to find at a lower price for this budget gear list. So let's dive right into it. All right, I'm going to also not get into a ton of detail with the with a bunch of these items, pretty much all of them. I'm going to try not to speak too much into these items. So you know, I'll do future reviews and things like that on a bunch of these items, but I actually own a lot of these items myself, and I'm just going to try to rifle through this as much as quickly because I got a long list to get through. So let's get to it. The first section that I'm going to be talking about here is going to be the big four. I don't know why people call it the big three, because in my mind there's 4 items that are included in it. But the first one that I want to talk about here is going to be, and I got a bunch of items off screen here, this is going to be your tent. So I have here the Lanshan Pro 1 by 3FUL Gear. I actually haven't used this one yet, but I've heard amazing things about it. It is about $168 for the one person. Again, this is the Pro model. You have to seam seal it yourself, just as a heads up on that one. And it only weighs in at about 29 ounces. So as I'm kind of like going through here, I'm going to mostly list the price point, and then I'm going to go over the weight of the product, and then maybe I'll throw in like 1 or 2 other things that I was thinking about at the time I was creating this list. So let's get into the second item of the big 4 here, and that is going to be your backpack. So I actually don't own this item. I own a version of it, which I'll show you a little bit later on in the video, but I'm going to recommend the 3FUL gear again. So this is the second option, or this is the second piece of gear from this manufacturer. It's a Chinese manufacturer, but they make great budget gear items. And this is going to be their starting point 56-liter backpack. So they have a couple of different models. I actually own the Pro model, which I think is about $30 more, somewhere around there. But I'm going to recommend just their base model. It only costs $65, and the weight is 30 ounces, so super lightweight. I'm also recommending, and you might have noticed that I'm recommending a frameless backpack here rather than a frame backpack. And you might be thinking, well, if this is a beginner's type of list or a budget list for a beginner type of backpack, why are you mentioning a frameless pack? Well, I think you can get into it quite easily, especially with the modification I'm going to tell you a little bit later on when I show my Pro version of the backpack. The third item for the big 4 here is going to be your quilt or your sleeping bag. So I'm going to recommend a quilt for you guys. I'm going to try to find it here for you. I actually just got this in yesterday, the day before. And this is by another Chinese maker called Nature Hike, and this is called, I think it's just their CW280, something like that. I don't know if it has an official name to it, but you can find this guy on Amazon. It comes with its own storage sack with it. It also has a stuff sack. Let's see if I can find it. You know, right here too, that compresses down. This weighs 1.9 ounces, and the quilt weighs somewhere around 19 ounces, I think. So together, if you were to use the compression sack and the quilt, it's going to be just at 21 ounces. This thing can get you to about the mid 40s. So that's another thing about this list I'm going to mention, is that this is about a 1.5 season type of budget gear list. So it's mostly going to be for those summer months and then those fringe seasons like late spring and early fall. So the comfort range on this, they list at about 52 degrees, and then the limit Climate they list somewhere around 42 degrees, somewhere around there. So I'm definitely gonna say if you're a warmer sleeper, if you're a guy and you're usually a warm sleeper like I am, then you could probably comfortably get down to about the mid 40s with this. And then to round out the top four here, or the big four for your sleeping pad. So I actually don't own this one. And I'm gonna do a shout out. I'm gonna get my shout out of the way real quick here. And it's gonna go over to Jeff over at Dose of Dirt. I'll post his information right up here for you guys to check out. I'm also gonna post information for one of his videos too, because he recently did a comparison for budget sleeping pads. So definitely check those out. But Jeff helped me out in a big way because I was actually torn between two different sleeping pads to recommend to you guys. I actually don't own either one of them, but I really wanted to do some hard research on it to give you guys an ultimate conclusion. But the one that I didn't go with is the one that Jeff ended up providing me pics for. He was gracious enough to snap pics of the one that he owns, and that is for the Trazon sleeping pad. I think that's a Chinese knockoff pad as well, but it really closely resembles the Sea to Summit Etherlight series and their baffling system. So they have an amazing baffling system that makes it super comfortable for you to sleep on when you're in the backcountry. So I was looking at that pad and I was like, man, I kind of really want to get that pad. It only was about, I think, like $30 or something like that, but the weight is what ultimately made me decide to go with my number one option for this one here. The weight of that pad, they list it on Amazon for 22 ounces, but in reality it's closer to, I think, 27. I think it's about 26 and a half, so it's just a little bit too heavy. So what I'm going to recommend here and what I'm going to go with is going to be the Climate Static V Luxe SL pad. So Climate is definitely one of those pads that a lot of people are going to recommend as sort of like your beginner to medium range type of pad. There's a couple of reasons why I ended up choosing this pad. One, it only weighs 21 ounces, so that's pretty lightweight. This is a non-insulated pad. I think the R value is somewhere around 1.5. If I'm wrong, I'll throw it up on screen. But again, it kind of combos nicely with the Nature Hike quilt, and it can probably get you comfortably down to about the mid 40 range, or the mid 40 degree range when you're out there. A couple other things that I really like about this pad. The first one was that it's super wide. It's like 27 inches wide. It does have a little bit of a mummy taper towards the feet, which I don't really care for, but that is just a really wide pad. It's also, I think, somewhere around 3.5 or 3.25 inches of thickness on it. So those are some pretty decent stats that ultimately ended up making me go with this pad. And the total cost on that is going to be $96. Pro tip for that one, sign up to be a member for Climate, and I think their original price is somewhere around $120, but if you sign up to be a member, they knock that down to under $100, so that's a really good deal. Let's head on over to some of the other items now to kind of like round out this one category. I didn't really lump a bunch of them into different categories. You'll hear me mention one or two here or there, but to round out just the items that I have on this top column here, another thing that I'm going to recommend, which not a lot of people are going to recommend, is going to be some sort of pillow. So I have here the small rectangular Thermarest pillow. As you can see, it has a ton of loft to it. It's really plush, really nice. Kind of reminds you of the pillow that you have at home. This you can get on Amazon. I ended up getting it for, I think, like Black Friday. Look around Black Friday, you can get it for a few bucks off. So I got this for $18.71, and it weighs 7.5 ounces. Don't go by the listed weight. I think they listed it at like 7 ounces online. On my scale, it weighed 7.5 ounces. Is definitely a heavier option. You can go with stuffing your clothes in a stuff sack and trying to use that as a pillow as well, but for me personally, I like to carry my own pillow when I'm out in the backcountry, so this is the one I'm going to recommend for that. And then the other thing I'm going to recommend here is going to be by way of, this is actually a dual purpose item, and you're going to be hearing a lot about this if you haven't already, and I actually have it right here. It's in its stuff sack, and this is the, I think it's pronounced Giga Pump. There are some backpackers that are out there that are going to recommend the one by Flextail, but this one is actually a little bit cheaper. Ultimately, what this is it is an air pump as well as a lantern. So if you double click it, it'll turn on. And then if you hold the button down, it'll turn into a light for you as well. It has a little handle here so that you can like hang it in your tent at night. And it goes all the way from I think like 40 lumens up to, I don't know, 200 or 400, something like that. You just keep clicking that one button there. And it also comes with, I think, 4 or 5 different attachments on it. So on my scale, with just I think this is like one of the larger attachments, you just kind of put it right in there. It weighs 3.1 ounces for these 2 items. I'm not gonna carry the stuff sack, just all I need to pump up my pad and use as an additional light source. So 3.1 ounces for this, and the total cost is $27. The Flex Tail one ended up coming in somewhere around like $30 range. So this one's just a few dollars cheaper, and it's basically the exact same pump. So that's it for your additional lighting source or your alternate lighting source, as well as something to pump up that sleeping pad with. Let's move on over to another item now. And I got it right down here. Now this is an item that you're not going to see in a lot of budget gear loadout lists, but for me, I really like to have as much comfortability when I'm on trail as possible. So I am going to actually recommend a side table for you guys, and this is by Cascade Wild. Again, I'm not affiliated with any of these products, guys. I'm not sponsored in any way, but this is a really easy side table, kind of simple design, just has a bunch of Velcro, and it's really just kind of like a hardened piece of cardboard that you can flip over. It can act as a tray when you're in the tent. That was a really cool thing that they had mentioned on their Amazon listing, but it's literally just a little top that you can put your food on, you can put your drinks on, things like that. It costs $16 if you just get the 1 pack. If you get like a 2-pack, I think it's somewhere around $25 on Amazon. And the weight, guys, it's only 2.25 ounces, so really lightweight, and definitely worth your consideration. Not a lot of people bring side tables, but I like to, so if you're thinking about bringing a side table and you want a good option, you can go with one of these. All right, let's get into the kitchen category now. I call it kind of kitchen. I only have like a few items that I'm going to list in here. The first of which is going to be not this exact model, but this is the Toaks Titanium 750 milliliter pot. I'm going to actually recommend the 550 milliliter pot, which is basically still a 2-cup capacity titanium pot for you to just boil water when you're in the backcountry. Usually when I head out, I only just do dehydrated meals. If you want anything more specific towards like cooking in the backcountry or something more advanced, and you're going to want to think about like skillets or things like that. But this is solely just for, you know, boiling your water when you're out there. I would definitely recommend a titanium pot. This is one of the more premium options and premium pieces of gear that I have on this list, and I did that for a couple of reasons. The first of which is because I really wanted to make a list that you guys could rely on when you went backpacking more, when you became more advanced into backpacking, and the other budget gear items just really don't cut it. And you can go to Walmart and get a simple stainless steel pot for like $5 or less, but you're gonna not use that for very long before you advance to something like this. And in my personal opinion, I've tried stainless steel, I've tried titanium, I've tried aluminum, and nothing really beats titanium when you want to boil water super quickly and rapidly. So this one you'll be hard pressed to find on sale. I'm kind of seen sales here and there, but I'm not going to recommend it for this video, so I definitely recommend this at full price. So the 550 milliliter pot comes in at $30, and it weighs a grand total of about 3 ounces, which is not that much. I think if you end up bringing the bag that it comes with here, it might add close to about a ½ ounce, but you can just remedy that by putting a simple rubber band around it to keep that lid on top of it. Okay, the next item for the kitchen area would be something that I have but just didn't want to dig out, so I'll just throw it on screen here, and that's the Etex City stove. And I'm not going to put a bunch of links in the description for you guys. You can kind of do your research on your own for this stuff, but when I was recording this, I don't think I was able to find this particular style or like the name of it, the Etex City name, but this is basically just a Chinese knockoff stove that has been made many different times by many different makers, and it's just rock solid. The reason why I chose it over even like the BRS stove, because the BRS stove is lighter, is that it's cheaper. First of all, it's only costs $12.50, and it's going to come in at a weight of about 3 ounces, so it's a little bit heavier than a BRS stove, but It has its own piezo igniter in it that I have yet to see fail. A lot of people say that that fails pretty quickly, but I got a pretty solid one, and I really like that, to just have my own ignition for my stove and then just carry a mini Bic as a backup instead of relying on the Bic lighter to light my stove. So I'm going to recommend the E-Tech City Stove for that specific reason. And then to round out this category, I'm going to recommend a spork, basically something to eat with, and I'm going to recommend this Yuko spork and knife set. And the reason why I'm going to recommend this one, there's a couple of other big names that you probably heard of. I actually only heard about this from like one other channel on YouTube. I'm surprised that this is not more popular, but the other ones that you're going to hear are going to be the Toke's long handle titanium spoon, but that one doesn't fold down. And then the other one you're probably going to hear about is going to be the Human Gear Go Bites Duo, which is a really nice set, and it's pretty similar to this, but what it doesn't have is this right here, which is the addition of some sort of serrated knife so that you can cut through like hard cheeses or chicken or softer meats, stuff like that. That's ultimately the reason why I ended up going with this one over any other style. It weighs in at only 1 ounce total, and it costs about $8 on Amazon. It comes in a bunch of different colors. Now let's head on over to the clothing category right now, and I actually only have one article of clothing that I'm going to recommend because every other piece of clothing is very personalized to the user, so I'm not going to recommend anything else other than a puffy coat or that outer shell, something that will really keep you warm in those colder temperatures. And the one I'm going to recommend, I don't own, but I'll post some pictures up here, and that is going to be the Decathlon. It's called the 4-Class or the Trek 100 jacket. You may have heard of this one, recommended by a lot of other YouTubers and backpackers that are out there. It's really great because it's a down jacket, and I forget what the fill is. I think it's around 800 fill power or something like that. It's going to keep you just as warm as the really expensive puffy jackets, but it's going to cost a fraction of the price and only weigh slightly more. So the total amount that you can expect to spend on a jacket like that is going to be $80 off of their website, and the total weight is 10.2 ounces. Now you compare that to something like the Mountain Hardwear Ghost Whisperer that I got on a Black Friday sale at over half the cost, and it still cost me $155. The normal MSRP on that jacket is $324, or you can also try to compare this jacket to the super popular Enlightened Equipment Torrid jacket, I think it's called, which has a synthetic fill. That's really the only benefit of the Torrid over this jacket, is that the Decathlon jacket is a down jacket, so if you get it wet, it's going to lose pretty much all its insulation value. And then if you have the Enlightened Equipment jacket, it will retain a little bit of that heat if you have a little bit of moisture for that synthetic film. But the cost of that jacket, I think, is $150 plus as well too. So this is half the cost, and it's going to keep you just as warm, and it's only going to be about 1 ounce to 1.5 ounces heavier, and it really depends on the size of jacket that you go with. But that's going to be it for the clothing section. The next section I'm going to get into is going to be for safety. So the first thing I'm going to recommend right off the bat is going to be for a satellite communication device. This is another thing that a lot of people are not going to put on their budget gear loadout lists, but I definitely will prioritize safety in every single one of my videos. So let me just grab that for you real quick. Now this is the Garmin InReach Mini. This is the one I'm going to recommend, and this is actually one of the more premium pieces of gear as well, but I got an insane deal on this one, guys. I don't know why a lot of people tend to knock REI, but become an REI member. It's a lifetime membership. It only costs you $20, and I ended up getting this at $100 off. There's a majority of the savings on this list today, guys. I could do a whole video on this by itself, but I definitely recommend this one for a few different reasons. Mostly the weight. It's definitely one of the lightest weight. It has an onboard screen, and it works off of the Iridium network, and it is one of the best when it comes to the subscription that you can get for a satellite communication type of device. So I definitely recommend this one. Normal MSRP is $350. Again, I got $100 off, so it's $250, and the weight, including the little carabiner, which you need to kind of like hook on your strap, weighs in at 4 ounces. Moving right along, in the realm of safety, I'm going to recommend this in a bunch of other videos too, but that is going to be this guy right here. So this is the Frontiersman bear spray. You don't really have to get this particular brand, just any form of bear spray. I really like to have this not only for bears because I'm in the SoCal area, but also for any other type of animals that you might encounter when you're on the trail, or any other type of weirdos that you might encounter on the trail. It's definitely nice and gives you a peace of mind to have an item like this. This costs around anywhere from like $33 to $40, and it's going to weigh 10.65 ounces. So pretty close to 3/4 of a pound, but I would definitely recommend it from a safety perspective. And then to round out the safety category, I'm going to recommend this guy right here. No, it's not a jingle bell. This is actually a bear bell. So kind of going along with the bear safety, it's really just nice to be able to kind of like jingle on the trail and make sure that you know, all the other animals kind of stay away from you, can hear you from a mile away, so that you don't have to say like, hey bear, every 5 seconds, or you know, try to go out of your way to remember to make noise. Just kind of gives you a peace of mind, and it's really lightweight too. It only costs $3 and it weighs 1.6 ounces. All right, that's it for the safety. Let's get into the other miscellaneous type of items here. Here's another item that I don't see anybody else really include on a budget gear loadout list, and I'm going to recommend a chair. You probably heard me talk about this one in a few of my other videos. I actually have a video where I talk about this. This is the REI FlexLite Air Chair. I'll post a link to that right up here, but where I did my first impression on this. But this weighs in with the bag with it for about 17 ounces, and it only costs $70. Again, this is by REI. Got this on sale, normal MSRP of $100, but become a member and you will see this at least 2 or 3 times a year at about $70 range. So I definitely recommend this. You want to make sure that you are comfortable when you're at camp, and you want to make sure after a long day of hiking that you have a way to relax that's not just a sit pad or sitting on a rock or a log. So I can't recommend a chair enough. All right, the next piece of kit that I'm going to recommend is going to be in the area of water filtration. It's not this one. I have a Sawyer Mini. I'm actually going to recommend the Sawyer Squeeze. It's a system that is just kind of like bulletproof. There are a couple others that are out there that I wouldn't really recommend either because they're too heavy or they're too finicky. This is kind of idiot proof, and that's really what you want when you're out there. Simple style, has an O-ring, goes in one way, squirts out the other. Comes with a couple of bags with it too, 2 like 1 liter bags, as well as this like plunger here to kind of like back flush it when you're done filtering your water. So the Sawyer Squeeze is a little bit heavier than the Mini, but the flow rate is a little bit better, so I'm going to recommend that one. Again, that is going to be one of the more higher, I wouldn't say higher, but more of the normal priced items, and that's going to be about $30 on Amazon. You can pick it up a lot of different areas, but just grab it on Amazon. It's really easy. And I'm going to say that the weight is going to be somewhere around 5 ounces because the kit comes with 2 additional 1 liter bags, and that's what I'm going to recommend for your additional like dirty water bags when you're bringing them out there. So I'm going to say it's somewhere around like 5 ounces in weight. I don't own it, and I think the filter itself is somewhere around 4 ounces. So with a bag or 2, I might be off by like an ounce or 2, but I'm going to say the ballpark there is somewhere around 5 ounces. The next thing that I'm going to get into is going to be your primary source of illumination on trail. And I actually don't have it here with me, but it is the Go for Wild headlamp. I love this headlamp. I'm probably going to do an entire video on it, but it is a really great headlamp. It only costs $14. I'm looking it up right here. And the lumens are like 500 on it. It goes up way high, but it has like 2 or 3 settings, so you can kind of like dial it in and see what's right for you. And it only weighs 2.6 ounces. You could probably get rid of the strap that it comes with and save a little bit, like a lot of people like to do with the Nightcore NU25 headlamp. But you know, for $14 and 500 lumens, it is USB rechargeable. You can't beat that, guys. Let's head on over to the next item here. I'm going to recommend some form of a battery bank backup for you guys. So I shoot videos when I'm out there. If you have really electronic heavy devices that you need to charge up when you're out there, you definitely want to go with something that's a little bit more than this one that I'm going to recommend. But I'm going to recommend this guy right here. This is by PowerAd, and it is a simple 5,000 milliamp battery bank. It is a couple of reasons why. You only really need about 5,000 if you're going out for a weekend or so. If you're going out for anything longer than that, that, I would definitely recommend something that is a little bit higher, at least double than this, and at about the 10,000 range. But if you're only going for a couple of days out there and you're only bringing like your camera or one or two other, like a watch or something like that, that's smaller than 5,000 should do you just fine. This only costs $12 and it weighs 3.5 ounces. So it'll definitely power up a couple. It's not going to do a bunch, but it'll definitely get you through a weekend of smaller electronic use. All right, moving right along here. The next piece of gear that I'm going to talk about is something that is crucial. It's actually one of my essential gear items that I always end up bringing, and that is going to be some way to patch or repair things that might rip, like your tent or your coat or any other article of clothing that you need to just make a quick patch when you're out in the field. I definitely recommend this right here. This is just a small roll of tenacious tape, and this stuff is really great. It is just basically like a really strong adhesive tape. I get it in clear so that you don't have to worry about the different colors. They do have different colors, but just get it in clear. And this is a really small roll. It weighs next to nothing. It's like 0.2 ounces on my scale, and it only costs $5. This will save you in a lot of different ways, so definitely consider bringing this out with you. The next thing I'm going to talk about is going to be how to deal with those pesky bugs in the field. So I'm going to recommend a bug head net. There's a lot of different models that are out there. I think this one is by like Benvo. Basically what it is just a stocking that you put over your head that will deal with those pesky gnats that, like, you know, regular bug spray does nothing against. This costs only $3.50. If you get like a 2-pack on Amazon, I think I got this for like $7 for a 2-pack, so $3.50 for this, and it only weighs in at about 3/4 of an ounce, so 0.75 ounces, so next to nothing. You may never need it, but when you do need it, you need it, so I definitely recommend that as part of my gear list here. The next thing I'm going to recommend, let me show you the backpack now so I can explain what I'm talking about. So this right here is the starting point backpack in the Pro model, but this is what I'm going to recommend right here, and that is the sit pad. Because this is a frameless pack, you need something to kind of like cushion the blow a little bit, so you have all that stuff riding on your back and makes it a little bit easier for you. So this is what I'm going to talk about right here. Let's get the backpack out of the way. It was basically just a closed cell foam sit pad. It'll cost you anywhere from like $5 to $10. I think I ended up listing this for $10, so that's a little bit more on the expensive side, and it only weighs 1 ounce. So you can use this in a lot of different ways. You can use it to insulate your butt on the colder nights when you're in that REI FlexLite air chair. You can use this as a doormat right outside your tent. To keep your shoes on and anything else that you don't want to like bring dirty, nasty stuff into your tent, and just a lot of other uses for this. You can fan your fire with it too. So this is kind of like an invaluable thing that I always end up bringing, so I definitely recommend that as well. And you can also just use it as it's intended, just as a sit pad to take a break when you're on trail, have a quick snack or whatever. So sit pad, definitely an awesome thing to have. All right, the next thing I'm going to recommend here might be a little bit controversial, but you know, I always end up bringing it. There are different forms of it that you can bring, but let me just show you what I mean here. These are a pair of workman type gloves, or just like handyman kind of gloves. It's really good just as a light insulator on those colder nights, but what the primary use of this is for is that, you know, when you're out there, you're dirty, you're processing firewood for your fire, you're ripping up those tent stakes, and there's a bunch of dirt on the ground, things like that. It just keeps your hands clean, keeps your hands safe too if you're working with other sharp objects or whatever, sticks and twigs and things like that. So I always end up bringing a pair of these. It only costs $16. Got this off of Amazon as well. These are the CLC gloves, and it weighs about 3 ounces. So this is definitely a little bit heavier, but that's a pretty good price range, and you can definitely find gloves that are more lightweight and maybe a little bit warmer, so you're in like the 2 ounce range or something like that. But these are going to be a lot more durable to just deal with a lot of those like rougher conditions when you're out there. All right, what haven't we talked about yet? Well, one item would be for your rain protection. Now, there are a bunch of different coats that you can buy. Frog Togs is a really cheap end style of raincoat if you want to go with that. But what I'm going going to recommend, particularly because the backpack that I'm recommending is not waterproof and it will sag because it is a sil nylon, I'm basically just going to recommend a very simple poncho. This thing is like 1 ounce or 1.5 ounce. I think it's 1.5 ounces. It's a disposable poncho and it only costs $1. You get like a 10-pack for like 10 bucks and it's $1. Is it gonna hold up? No. If you're like bushwhacking, you're going into like thicker brush, will it rip? Yes. But I think the majority of the time, and especially on the trails that I go on, they're a little bit wider, so I'm not really worried about that. And the coverage that this is gonna give you is like unprecedented. You're not gonna look the coolest when you're out there, but let's face it, we're not going out there for looks, right? This is going to not only protect your head and your arms, but it's also gonna protect your backpack, as well as like drape down close to around your knees, maybe a little bit higher up. But I mean, for $1, you don't have to use it for just one use. You can use it for a couple of different uses or until it wears out, and it really just protects you in a lot of ways. So I don't really hear a lot of people talking about ponchos, and I think you should definitely give it a look. The other things I'm going to recommend here, getting into the last few items to round it out here, first of which is going to be like other bags, stuff sacks, things like that. A lot of people are going to recommend a Dyneema, and it's really expensive even though it's lightweight, but it is waterproof. But you know what's a really great option that pretty much everybody has that you can use to organize your electronics or other things, small ditties and things like that, is just this, just a simple Ziploc bag. This isn't even Ziploc, this is the Walmart version and the Great Value version. You know, you get gallon bags, you can get quart freezer bags. They work great for dehydrated meals too. If you want to split them up, get a freezer gallon bag, and they weigh literally like next to nothing. I think I have it here as like 0.2 ounces for like one of the bigger ones here, and then the cost is going to be cents. I don't know, you know, it's going to be really cheap, so I didn't end up putting a price on this. But instead of like using all the other stuff sacks, like, you know, for the Gigapump, like something like this, it's going to like weigh you down. You don't really need it. But for the stuff that you do need a little bit more organization, this is still going to be waterproof anyway, so you can throw your electronics in this, and it's a really cheap way to just kind of like organize your stuff inside of your pack. So that's it for the organization of the smaller things. The next thing I'm going to recommend is going to be your first aid kit. Now this one, I'm just going to keep it really simple. You can make up your own. You can go to like Walmart or somewhere else and just kind of like make up whichever one you need. I ended up going with the Adventure Medical Kit 0.5, and this one is really simple. I think it only cost me like $19, and it weighs in at 1/4 ounce, and that's completely stacked with everything that's in it. You can end up like rifling through this, taking out what you don't need, but it's just nice to have a first aid kit, so I'm definitely going to recommend something like that. And then also goes along with safety, so you want to be safe when you're out there. The next thing that I'm going to recommend, this is going to be the last item for your base weight, and it's not a particularly glorious one, but let me just rifle through here. And yes, we're talking about the poop kit, guys. So I got my kit here. It's a total kit, like some hand sanitizer and wipes or whatever, but it's this thing right here. This is the Deuce Spades. It is just a simple titanium trowel. It weighs in at 0.6 ounces, and it costs $20. Now this is definitely one of the more expensive items as well, but I was thinking to myself, and I was like, you can get a cheaper one. I think Coghlan's has one. It's about like 2 ounces, and it only costs like $5 or something like that, but it's really big and cumbersome, and I have it, and I never ended up using it, and just like went over to this one. It's not only lighter, but it just has such a lower profile in your pack, so I think you can get a budget item for that, and it's not going to have a huge dent on the overall weight. So weight wasn't a huge factor with this. I just really like the low profile of this. You can use it from either angle, like the top end or the other side, you know, that's why I'm recommending this one. I think a lot of people just end up going with this eventually, so that's why I'm just going to recommend it right out of the gate. All right, the last 2 items are not included in the base weight here because it's either going to be like on your person, you're going to be carrying it, but I'm going to recommend it, and it's going to be in on this list as well. The first of which I'm going to recommend are the Bafx trekking poles. I think that's how you pronounce it, BAFX trekking poles. These are carbon fiber trekking poles. They only weigh in at, I think, about 7.5 ounces per pole, so 15 ounces total for the set, and it only costs $37, guys. You can't beat that. I mean, you look at the Gossamer Gear poles and, you know, the Z-Pax poles, and they're gonna run you at least $60 or more. This is a great set that is very comparable in weight, and then the price you just can't beat. So I was actually introduced to this brand because I got the aluminum set as a gift from from my buddies, and I ended up like graduating over to the carbon fiber version of these poles, and I really love them. They're really great. They have flip locks on them too, so that's what I'm gonna recommend for trekking poles. And the last item that I have on my list to round it all out here is going to be, let me find it, it's like buried over here. Is this little guy right here. This is the Micro SD Swiss Army knife. Really popular, a lot of people are carrying them. Costs $17 and it only weighs 0.7 ounces. It's got a knife on it, it's got a file on it, it's got a toothpick, it's got some tweezers on it, and it also has the scissors. I love this thing so much. It's part of my everyday carry. I don't think I've ever seen this guy on sale, but just do yourself a favor and pick this up. It's useful in so many other ways. But that's gonna do it, guys. It's gonna round out the entire list. Now, here's the sticker shock for you guys. You might be thinking to yourself, after I give you this number, you're gonna be like, what? That's not a budget gear list loadout because it's not under a certain price point. But let me tell you this, for the money, this is going to set you guys up, not only initially if you're thinking about first getting into backpacking, but it is also going to set you up as you become more advanced. And that's why I ultimately decided to create this list of items. It is because meticulously planned out for that very reason of not only starting you out in backpacking, but also setting you up for the future. The overall price point, I'm gonna link down below in a Google Doc for you guys to check this out as well, is going to be $1,170.71, and that's with all the sales and everything included. So definitely hunt for those sales and look for these price points specifically on this list. And again, the total ounces comes in at about 185 ounces, which is roughly 11.5 pounds. The items that I didn't mention on here are going to be some form of bug spray or bug relief, like anti-itch type of stuff, some form of sunscreen. You want to protect yourself from the sun, other packed clothes like extra undies or socks or pants or shirts, whatever you decide on bringing, some form of camp shoe. You can get like one at the Dollar Tree or the Dollar General type store and really get some super cheap sandals, or there's more expensive items. I did a video on that as well. I can link that up here for you guys for a more expensive option, but those are really cheap, and you might want to consider something like that as well. Some form of watch I didn't include on that list. Some form of mug, so basically your titanium pot is what you'd have to drink out of. If you want an additional cup or mug, then you'd have to consider something additional there. And then your toiletries, toothbrush, things like that, toothpaste. I wear contacts, so stuff like that. And then the last thing that I didn't put on this list would be a cell phone. I think everybody carries it. It definitely will add to the weight, and it'll add at least 6 ounces or more to the overall weight, but that is an extremely personal choice, and I wasn't going to recommend a cell phone for you guys to go with. That's it. That is the exhaustive list. I'm going to try to condense this down as much as possible. Hopefully I did for you guys. Thanks so much for sticking with me this entire video. I really appreciate you guys. I really want to hear what your thoughts are down below on any of these gear items that I had mentioned, but also anything worthy of consideration that I might have missed. I want to hear from you guys, and I want to hear all about it. But thanks so much for stopping by, guys. And remember, if you headed off grid, make sure you do your research and you make it a safe one. I'll see you later.